be candidly held.
All right, as we wind up on this conversation, let's bring up another issue of the DPP's new charge sheet. This one will need your guidance as the advocates of the High Court. 2 days after the Director of Public Prosecutions, Nurdin Haji, directed his officers to make changes to the new charge sheet drafted by his office following concerns raised by lawyers, the charge sheet is yet to be amended. But this comes even as a number of cases were deferred as lawyers challenged the new charge sheet, which they argue is inadmissible as it has the DPP's logo, which is not recognized by the Constitution for use on any document. So what is the truth here, Joy? Who is fooling who, what should happen, when and how? Because now this is a legal debate all of a sudden.
You know, we've been here twice before, and I'm surprised that people are behaving as if this is such a crisis. This is a matter of just simply aligning. So if I remember correctly, early 2000s, there was a ruling that came out of the Court of Appeal that any matters that were tried by prosecutors who are less than the rank of an inspector of police were tried by incompetent prosecutors and therefore could not proceed.
Yeah.
And so overnight, all those police constables and corporals who are prosecutors were rendered jobless. And that time I was having on the bench. We woke up in the morning and none of us had a prosecutor. Apart from the chief magistrate is the one who had an inspector, and I think the principal. Everybody else, we just sat in chambers until they found enough police inspectors or gave enough promotions for them to carry on. Why? Because at that time, the Office of the Attorney General had donated powers to the police to actually carry out investigations. Fast forward to the mid-2000s, and we have the situation where the Office of the ODPP decides, you know what, all prosecutions shall be carried out by qualified advocates so that they can carry out the prosecutions more competently. He's no longer going to depend on the police. So even those inspectors who were prosecutors up until that point were phased off. So what we're seeing now is like the final chapter in this evolution from the police being investigators and prosecutors to now the prosecution going and being vested where it really ought to be in the office of the DPP.
Yeah.
Now, there is a background to this. If you look at the way the office of the DPP has been set up, it's been set up as an independent office. It is supposed to operate on the basis of taking matters to court that it believes warrant to go before court. The police, on the other hand, work on the basis of we have investigated and we think you need to go to court. Sometimes the threshold is not met. And what we have seen in the past, for example, let me give you, like the charge sheet, the Aurora and Kimarer one.
Yeah.
You had so many accused persons on one charge sheet,
and
so many charges on one charge sheet, and you have one magistrate who's supposed to deal with a battery of 50 lawyers and supposed to make head or tail of it. You could tell that that was something that was drafted to fail from the onset.
Yeah.
So now, what the law has said now is, if prosecutions fail, the person you're going to ask is not the person who drafted the charge sheet. We're going to ask the person who's going to prosecute. And that's why Judge Murima says, look, you need to be in charge of this process from drafting of the charge sheet. What that forces the office of the DCI then to do is take evidence to the office of the ODPP so that they can determine, can this thing stand? And if it can stand, then what is the charge sheet? The bit that I find curious is people interpreting this to mean that the charge sheet itself or the form must change. As far as I'm concerned, it's not the form that's changing.
Yeah.
What is changing is the person preparing it. I read the statement, the signal that was sent by the DCI, that no one shall take any statement under caution, nobody shall do what? Well, that's the job of the DCI. Nobody else can take statements under caution. Nobody else can do the investigations. That's what you're supposed to do. It's the office of the DCI. But you, once you've done it, like the EACC, take it to the ODPP, and they decide where they're going to take it, how they're even going to take it forward.
Yeah.
Why this is also important is because the high number of cases that have been failing at the prosecution stage is partly due to this disconnect. Because the person prosecuting the matter was not there at the genesis of it. So you were brought a file in court and there is a charge sheet and yeah, let's take plea and let's start. So you're there thumbing through and trying to make head or tail. But if you are the one who read the evidence back and forth and decided, you know what, this guy ought to be charged with this, even as a prosecutor, what you will do is a more competent job. As far as I'm concerned, people just need to sit down and have an honest conversation about it.
Yeah.
I remember I made a comment about it and somebody said, oh, unateta na mnanyang'anya polisi nyama kwa mdomo. Well, for a long time, they have been used to arrest Kipchumba, charge him with any frivolous what they used to call them holding charges. And by the time we realize that there's nothing there, like that Linturi one, by the time we realize there's nothing there, it's been 3 weeks of harassing somebody. Now that thing now is going to die. So it's a good thing for Kenya, but the rivalry between the DCI and the DPP has played out for so long that these two gentlemen just need to man up and sit down. Unfortunately for the DCI, he behaves as if he's the head of the institution, but it's the IG who's in charge of the DCI. So until that time when his stature is leveled up to the level where he can start going head to head with the DPP, he's always batting his head against the wall, and it's not looking pretty. Okay. But the DPP also should be just a little bit kind, and, you know, hata kama unabadilisha, kuja pole pole ndo mwenzako asione ni kama there's nothing that they mean. Because the truth is, we have used these police drafted charge sheets all these years, and we've done pretty well with them. Yeah. Honestly, having a transition period is not something that is unreasonable to ask. Okay,
Kipchumba, as you wind up on this.
I think there are 3 things that we need to look at in the whole debate. Yeah. It is more common sense that it is legal. Number 1, there is a problem of transition that was rushed. We transitioned so fast from police prosecutors to legal, the people with a legal background being prosecutors. Yeah. They ought to have been faced, so that we say we will start with the lower courts and then moving forward. You get my point? And also, police might have all the bad names they have, but there is experience. I got an opportunity to do my judicial attachment back then when prosecutors were policemen. I learned a lot from them. I can't just say they were the wrong thing. And my suggestion would have been, now that it has already been done, it will have been done in a phased manner. Yeah. Because there are men and women who are there. I remember Kemunto was my prosecutor then, IP. She had so much experience because she had been in the system for a while, like 10 or 15 years. So you can't throw away that experience because somebody who has an LLB came around, but that is already water under the bridge. Come back to the 3 issues. Number 1 is the threshold. Criminal threshold is beyond reasonable doubt. Some of the charges that are drafted by police are not drafted to meet that threshold. They are drafted because you did not pay the bribe they wanted. Let us call a spade a spade. I ask you, give 5,000. Usipotoa 5,000 nasema aende kotini ajitete. Are we meeting the threshold or we are enforcing the bribe? That is number 1. Number 2, independency of the office of the Director of Public Prosecution. Why this was done is because of our history as a country. We have an history where the regimes, the Moi regime, the Kenyatta regime, they used that office to enforce political arrests, to weaponize the systems in the country, to make sure that Nyayo, Techa, Chempa and all these existed. So at the end of the day, when we voted for the 2010 Constitution, we voted knowing we wanted an independent office of the Director of Public Prosecution, and that is why we delinked it from an appointee who is the Attorney General. Because before, the Attorney General used to be the head, and then under him now where the solicitor is, it was the DPP. We delinked that. And what the people at the DCI must understand, they say the law, just like the gospel, it works for the good of man and woman. It is not for the good of Nurdin. It is for the good of this nation. They must understand that there is a reason why the DPP sits on top of the IG, because the DPP directs the IG to investigate a file. The DCI is below the IG. So how comes there even be an institutional rivalry between DCI and the DPP? There is no such an institution in the eyes of the DPP. The institution that exists and the one that the law has ordained is the IG. Inspector General. So when we are seeing this, it is a misnomer. It means that there is a problem. And where the problem began also, Trevor, it began the moment we started weaponizing institutions to fight political gains. That is why it began, because remember how these guys came on board. They came as the duo. They went to Italy to look for corruption. They were the Tsars in town. That is where we lost the point. And then the friendship between Nurdin Haji and Kinoti should not be confused or mixed up with the role of ODPP and the role of DCI. Those are two independent offices where even if I hate you, the law must be followed.
Yeah.
Even if I like how you do things and we are friends, the law must be followed. The third point, checks and balances, institutional checks and balances.
Yeah.
You arrest and investigate. Somebody else will prosecute. The other person will judge. That is how it's supposed to work. But the police, because mostly of our colonial era mentality and the bribe enforcement kind of thinking, they want to be the one arresting, investigating, and prosecuting. It can't work. Number two, when you read the claims from the letter that originated, I think, from the DCI,
yeah,
you don't understand the head and the tail of the letter. You cannot refuse to do your work. You have been employed here to read news. You cannot come and say because the camera people did something, you start fighting with your role of reading news. You must read news even if the camera doesn't focus on you. The HR people must find you here. Yeah. That is what we assume. So that letter is first of all misplaced, and misplaced because of this.
Yeah.
Just because a court of law has said this is how things should be done, you do not go and collect or pick a grudge, yeah, against fellow respondents. You go and appeal that one.
Okay.
That is how the law operates. So,
all right,
and then you do not bring opinions, yeah, over a legal issue, and you are a party. You appeal.
Okay.
You know this, but the making and politicizing the whole issue and bringing it to be a public discourse is a waste of time. Let us abide by Justice Murima's ruling, and if somebody amongst the parties feels like they are really aggrieved, what they do is they go to court of appeal. Okay. And the law, the best thing about litigating, Trevor, is like light. The more you are appealing something, the more closer to light you are. So everything will be illuminated, okay, and we will see them for what they are.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have to leave it there. But let's see what you're saying in feedback at Trevor Mbiji at Citizen TV Kenya. Is the hashtag Daybreak. Let's bring that up as we give space for Roy T-Boy on the decks. Engineer Lazaro says blocking people from vying before court verdict is unconstitutional. We can't judge people based on rumors. That trend would open Pandora's box for lazy politicians to wrongly incriminate their opponents. Okay. Mutavi Mbuvi says, why didn't Ruto call for Matiang'i's resignation in 2017? Again, ask him, when did Ruto become the DP to a point of accessing intelligence report, yet he claimed he was sidelined by Uhuru and his duties assigned to Hao Majama? Conrad Gulo says, there can be no person who can be politically neutral. That's it. That's the truth that we cannot pretend to run away from. The Jubilee government under DP Ruto set a bad precedence. The 2017 elections had the DP, CSS, Musheru and Kibicho on their campaign trail. Okay. Sam Masika says, Kalonzo Musyoka has returned to Azimio la Umoja party in preparation for his exit. What is in it for Sunkuli? This is inconsequential since most of his people had their minds made up already. Kenyans will put Kenya first. Okay. Chalo Woodrozy says Kalonzo Musyoka did well by rejoining Azimio One Kenya Alliance. He has realized that's the next government. In order to help Kenyans and the people of Ukambani, position of power is very important. Being a chief minister will do wonders for him. Okay. Pacho says all these roadside appointments are like promissory notes that may equally be dishonored. Wait until a sitting president receives power. Well, the falling out will be loud and the casualties will be many. Joshua says, for me, I saw it coming. It was a good chance for Kalonzo to revenge after being humiliated during the NASA divorce. He did when they needed him the most and made sure that this time the check is valid. Okay. Joshua still says, as I always say, nobody's clean. All the active political players have in one way involved and benefited in public resources, only that they choose not to tell the public the truth in order for some to look clean and some dirty. Wakenya tupige kura na tuongeze maombi. Okay.
But my parting shot.
Yes, very briefly.
Number one,
yeah,
there is something in one of the tweets that must be corrected. Mm-hmm. When Kenyans fought for devolution, it was so that things go without saying nimeona mkubwa.
Yeah.
So that mentality that Kambas will benefit because Kalonzo is there is also totally hogwash, because people will benefit no matter who.
Kalonzo will benefit because Kalonzo is
yes,
there.
but the people of Kambani benefit because they are Kenyans.
Yeah.
Their account is there. Number two, and the final point, promises, just like babies, they are easy to conceive, but difficult to deliver.
If you enjoy closing remarks also. That's a weird analogy, but yeah, we get it.
But it works. No, but the one thing that I'm grateful, even when I see your viewers' comments, is that Kenyans are engaging more intellectually.
Yeah.
Because the problem with politics is that for a long time it has not been a rational process. But when we are coming into a situation like Kenyans are having now, where they're asking legitimate questions and demanding answers, then there is hope for this country. Okay. The one thing that I hope Kenyans will also remember is that, like Oliver has said, these guys, when they're negotiating and dishing out these goodies, they're dishing it amongst themselves. You're not sitting at that table.
Yeah.
Pay attention to who you're electing at your local level. Who's your MCA? Who's your governor? Because those are the people who will affect the day-to-day of your lives. Some of these people up here, right now they're negotiating, they're looking out for themselves. That's why I said Kalonzo will benefit because Kalonzo is sitting at the table. But if Ukambani think they'll benefit, y'all are still, you know, nyinyi na Mungu, muongeze maombi. Me, I'm with that guy. Ongezeni pia maombi.
We have to leave it there. Oliver Kipchumba and Joy Mudivu, advocates of the High Court, thank you so much for making time this morning. We're taking a quick break. When you come back, Roy T-Boy is on the decks. It's Friday, people. We always have a reason to celebrate. See you in a bit.